I'm personally turning to mantras to help get me through this tough time. And I hope that these mantras will ground you in self-love. That's what this podcast is about. That is what I'm all about. And I think the last mantra that I'm going to share with you specifically, the fifth one, is going to help bring it all full circle so that not only you feel a sense of comfort and solace in these mantras, but so that you feel empowered to take aligned action toward the change that you want to create. Before we dive in, I'd like to read a positive podcast review because I find myself just hanging on to your words of encouragement. And this one says, "Finally, I found a podcast that I resonate with. There's so many mental health related podcasts, but I've never found one that has seriously taught me so much. Within the first few weeks of listening to this, I have improved my mindset and I have seen a huge difference in my mood. So thankful for this." I am so thankful for you. I'm so thankful for your listenership. If you follow me on social media, especially if you're a retreat sister who's had a chance to spend sacred time with me in person, I just feel this increased calling to lean into my micro community, to keep going with this podcast, with Mary's Cup of Tea, and spreading the gift of self-love. So real quick, before we dive into the 5 mantras, sayings, quotes, affirmations, whatever you want to call them, I personally chose the word mantra because I am a spiritual person and I practice a lot of yoga in my life. But I also want to acknowledge that the word mantra actually its origins aren't how we use it today. The word mantra comes from ancient Buddhist and Hindu traditions. And in Sanskrit, a quick etymology lesson that I think you'll appreciate, if you break the word down in Sanskrit, the root mana means mind and tra means vehicle. So mantras are this vehicle of the mind, something to transport you beyond your thoughts. Originally, though, what I find interesting is that mantras actually don't involve words or phrases. They're more a combination of phonetic sounds. And I think that was probably intentional, right? It's supposed to be something that's a little otherworldly, not necessarily, English words pieced together into a nice sentence. But nevertheless, while appreciating the origin of the word mantra and the culture that it came from, I think it has evolved to be just as useful for us, and using it in a way that's like, I just see mantras as a little bit deeper than affirmations, and they're also not all about you. Whereas affirmations are like, I am worthy, I am fierce, I am grateful. I think those can be helpful to an extent, but mantras, or at least the mantras that I refer to, they actually help me see beyond myself. So these mantras, even if they can't completely shift your perspective when you are in despair, and some of us are, whether it's a mental health challenge or the current state of the world or something that we're going through, even if they don't completely change your mind and make you think super positively about yourself, I think that mantras have the power to help you zoom out and see yourself in the context of everything that came before you, everything that will come after you, everything you don't know, and even what you don't know that you don't know. So let's dive into 5 mantras that can help you through tough times. The first one is be here now. Be here now. This is something that I say a lot at retreats. And when I say it, I like to play with the emphasis of the words. So you can say it like, be here now. Be here now. Be here now. Depending on what you need. I think that's a very powerful practice. Be here now. Be here now. And be here now. Be here now is actually the title of a book by a spiritual teacher whose name is Ram Dass. He is best known for bringing Eastern philosophies to the West. He's like a yogi practitioner. Fun fact, also a bisexual man who was like a hippie in the 70s. And I think he has a lot of great teachings. So you can look up his lectures on YouTube. You can also find like really cool, I love those audio sounds where they put speeches over music. Do you know what I'm talking about? I have found some playlists on Spotify that do that. Like they'll put some philosophical teachings over music. So it can be equal parts like a meditation / a piece of composition, and it just listens so well, especially if you're doing something like taking a walk or practicing some yoga. So anyway, what be here now means to me personally is that I am safe in this moment. I want to ask you, like, are you safe in this moment? If you are feeling despair, hopelessness, anger, frustration, hurt, then you might say, no, Mary, I am not safe in this moment. There's a lot of shit going on and I do not feel safe. I want to ask you again, are you safe in this moment? 99% of the time, when you practice be here now, you can find a sense of safety within yourself. All those thoughts about how or why could this have happened, or oh my gosh, what is going to happen in the future? Of course, that's anxiety. And yes, it is valid to a certain extent. We must lean into our fears in order to take actions to prevent the worst case scenario. But if we are not grounded, if we're feeling unsafe in our bodies, if we are so overwhelmed with the impending doom that the emotions don't allow us to move forward because they're staying stuck as opposed to letting them move us through, if we are feeling that, then we first and foremost need to find a sense of safety within ourselves. We will never feel fully safe even if the world becomes a utopia. And the truth is, the world will never be a utopia. It'll never perfectly appeal and cater to everyone. And especially so if you're a marginalized person in this world. So it is our responsibility and our prerogative to find a sense of safety within ourselves so that we take care of ourselves and take care of each other and use that groundedness as the foundation for moving forward rather than being scattered and overwhelmed and guided by emotion. And also, we talked about this in a different episode, being so emotional or empathetic to so many causes that not only are you like spread thin and overwhelmed by your emotions, but you're letting empathy prevent you from action, because empathy feels the same in the brain as taking action. When you have, took on the emotional experience of somebody else, it feels like that you did a good thing. And in some ways we need empathy. Of course, we need a little bit of empathy, but to an extreme, empathy can just keep us stuck in those feelings of unsafety. So be here now to me is symbolic of safety within myself, that right here, right now, if I can tune into this present moment, no matter what is going on around me, be here now, and be here now, then I am safe. The second mantra that I lean on, and this one got me through some of the hardest times of my recovery, and I actually thought about tattooing this at a certain point, but I feel like it's just so tattooed on my brain now that I don't really need it on my body. And I've heard from many fellow recovery warriors that they use this one too, and that is, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. What I love about this too shall pass is that, similar to be here now, it reminds you to be in a present moment, but adds this extra layer of of noting the transience of all things. The good times, when you're happy, ecstatic, joyful, enjoying the life experience, you know what? This too shall pass. So it's a little push to be that much more grateful, to be that much more present. And then on the flip side, if you're going through something hard and dark and heavy, this too shall pass. Like, it won't stay forever. I don't know about you, but I felt surprised by myself with how, and I learn this every single time I'm in despair. It's like you feel like this is never going to end. I'm always going to feel this angry. I'm always going to feel this sad. It's never going to change. Especially people who have struggled with depression. I mean, that overwhelming feeling that is literally a big symptom, sign, characteristic of depression, is that you feel like it's never going to change. And then through support, various types of support, you come out on the other side, or at least you're not in as deep as you were. You're able to have a little bit more perspective, or I don't know if it's the brain's extraordinary capacity for resilience. You kind of level out. Our bodies, our brains, they're always searching for homeostasis. So we're never going to be in any heightened experience for too long. So if you feel a ton of anger or a ton of sadness, just know that that is the process of grief, and it might feel all-consuming, but this too shall pass. And I'm sure you can think of times in your life where you thought, this isn't going to end. I'm never going to get out. I'm always going to feel like this. And then this too does pass. If not the exact circumstance, then at least your feelings and emotions about said circumstance, they subside. Such is the nature of being a resilient human in a chaotic ass world. This too shall pass. The third mantra, I wonder if this will be contested by some. So let me know what you think of it, because it can be a challenging one, similar to the I am safe, are you safe in this moment? Your initial reaction might be to say, no, I'm not safe. But when we live moment to moment, micro moment to micro moment, that's the whole nature of this practice, is to have this. It's so wild because on one hand, we're really honing in to the one microscopic present moment. But then on the other hand, doing that helps us zoom out into the whole perspective and context of all things, and then come to this existential realization that we're all floating on this big, beautiful rock, and we have no idea where we're headed, hundreds of miles per hour, going nowhere fast. All together, we're all stuck in this human experience, and yet we feel so isolated within the mess of our humanness. So it's just so ironic to me and paradoxical that these mantras zoom you in while also zooming you out. How does that happen at the same time? What a beautiful dichotomy. So the third mantra that I want to offer to you is that everything happens for me, not to me. Everything happens for me, not to me. What if you could just believe for some time, even if, this is what's interesting, even if it's not true or doesn't feel true to you, there is so much bullshit that you're already believing about yourself that's not true, and yet you're still believing it. You're still living, thinking that to yourself. Why not believe something that might not be true, but is at the very least useful? Just try it. Something can be not true, but yet useful to believe. And I think this, viral trend of lucky girl syndrome, yes, it's brought up really interesting conversations about privilege. And yes, that is so real that some people are luckier than others. Some people are born luckier than others. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think there are some very well-intentioned coaches out there who say mindset is everything. I call bullshit. mindset is not everything. There are systemic issues to consider. There are cultural nuances to keep in mind. There is so much going on in the world that can inhibit your mindset, that can make it harder for you to achieve this positive mindset that so many people are selling. So I don't think mindset is everything. I want to amend that statement by saying that mindset is not everything, but it's the nearly one of the only things that is in your control. So maybe it's not everything, but it is everything to you. It is in your best interest to focus on your mindset and to cultivate a mindset that'll be a fertile ground for beautiful things to come into fruition. It's going to help you see the beautiful things that are already in your sphere and the possibilities of more beautiful things to come into your sphere. It's kind of like wearing glasses. It's the only analogy I can come up with right now on the fly, but we all to some extent are wearing our own perception of the world, and we see not just what we want to, but what we've been trained to see. And even though not all of us will be able to take our glasses off based on the circumstance, some, if not most all of us, we need our glasses to still see. I wear glasses. But it is our job to clean those damn lenses the best that we can. I studied economics in college, so the economic principle that pops into my mind that seems to apply to like everything in life that I think about is the Wilfredo-Pareto principle. And Wilfredo-Pareto came up with this like math equation thing that basically, when applied to life, it says that 80% of all results are a output of 20% of inputs. So 80% is attributed to just 20% that you can control. And this applies to so much. I think mindset isn't everything because 80% of it is socioeconomic status, your circumstance, your gender, your race, where you were born, who your parents were, your genealogy, your ancestry, like so many freaking things. But there's 20% that is mindset. And that 20% is what you can control. And it's going to influence how you see, think, feel about, and approach the other 80% of your life. That is my not super well flushed out thesis, but at least my case for valuing the power of your mind, even if it is not everything. So everything happens for me, not to me. It does not serve you to walk around thinking, woe is me. Why does this happen to me? What is going on? I feel so helpless and powerless, and I'm a victim to my circumstances. I'm not saying that you're not a victim of certain oppressive regimes in our world. We all are. We all are victims to some kind of certain circumstances. But it is not useful for us to succumb to that victimhood within our minds. We still must retain a sense of sovereignty, of authority, and of empowerment within ourselves in order to move forward, support ourselves, support each other, and take aligned action toward the world that we want to create. So I think in any situation, I think this is especially interesting when applied to smaller situations, like not the big tragic stuff that nobody deserves, but more so like the little things that kind of annoy you and piss you off. If you're like, okay, like this didn't go my way, but what if this is actually happening for me? Then your mind instantly, when you ask yourself a question, 80% of getting to the answer to a question is asking yourself the right question, the one that opens up possibilities and solutions and creative ideas instead of closes you off and keeps you stuck in that victimhood. And the question of like, how could this be happening for me makes you think of how this could be happening for you. An example that pops into my mind is, remember a couple months back how I had a guest, Raina Cohen, on the podcast? I don't know if I told you this, but my mic did not work that entire interview, and I sounded like I was underwater. And for weeks, I was beating myself up. I'm like, gosh, Mary, you are such an amateur. You've been podcasting for 5 years and you don't turn your freaking mic on. And now all of that was a waste of time. And you're going to have to email the guest again and ask her to come back. And everybody's busy. And I just felt so guilty and like blaming myself for the small mistake that I made, which was not turning my microphone on. And I did email the guest, actually. I emailed Raina and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I apologize profusely. Can we please re-record this? And she was on her book tour, I think. So she didn't reply to my email for about 8 or 9 days. And in those 8 or 9 days, I was like, okay, it's happening for me. Like, what can I do? How is this happening for me? What am I supposed to take from this? And then it hit me. I'm going to do a hybrid episode. It's something I've always wanted to try. I've always wanted to kind of piece together parts of an interview with my own takeaways from that conversation post hoc instead of like just airing a conversation. And I wanted to experiment with that podcast format for a while. So like, why not try it now? And that's exactly what I did. I produced this episode and it's still one of my proudest ones, I think, just because so much effort went into it. And it was about a topic I was very passionate about, which is the value of our platonic friendships. And I made this episode about it, kind of like NPR style. I think it was like episode 220, I believe, the one with Raina Cohen. And it's titled, Should Your Partner Be Your Best Friend? And I'm just really proud of how that came out. Now, of course, I had every excuse to just trash that interview and continue beating myself up and hope that the guest would come back and re-record this podcast with me. But when you ask yourself, how could this be happening for me? You start thinking about how this could be happening for you. And in some ways, there are positive perspectives of where our country is at right now. They're out there. I saw them on social media. I saw some people taking away some really beautiful things from this. There was this one Black woman who went on and she goes, 240 votes. We went from being enslaved by these people to Kamala Harris getting 240 votes. How amazing is that? What an accomplishment. Black women, I am so proud of you. That's what the creator was saying. 240 votes. That is coming from a person who has every right to be angry and upset and just destroyed by this news. And yet somehow she saw this as progress. And I thought that was just really powerful. And there were quite a few people. I mean, I think it's because I liked that particular video that I just started seeing a lot of this like positive election content, even though it wasn't exactly what many of us wanted. There are ways to see this as happening for our greater good. By the way, I linked the original video by the creator at I'm Daven. It's IMDAVEN on TikTok. Highly recommend following her. She has really great videos. And I hope that at least you can see this one because coming from her, it is so much more powerful than me regurgitating it. So head to the description, click on the link. It'll take you to Daven's TikTok. Sometimes you got to go backward a little bit before you can move forward. Sometimes it's like what is that called? Like a slingshot. You have to pull it back until it snaps, and then maybe we can bust forward. But everything is happening for you, not to you. Just choose to believe that, even if it doesn't feel true. At least it's useful. Okay, the fourth mantra is something that we already talked about a couple episodes ago in episode 224. It's titled How to Process Feelings Effectively. And in that episode, I brought you the case or, the fact, if I could say more confidently, that emotions need motion. Emotions need to move through us in order to be processed effectively. We cannot just sit with our feelings for too long, otherwise they will get stuck there. Unless you allow yourself to intentionally explode energy in small ways, you will involuntarily implode in a big way. Let me say that again. Unless you allow yourself to intentionally explode energy in small ways, you will involuntarily implode in a big way. That's what happens psychosomatically if you let emotions get stuck in your body. Emotions need motions. They need to move through you. You need to do productive, positive things in order to get the feelings out. That can be shaking, like literally shaking your hands, like rubbing your arm downward. I'm doing this like start from your shoulder and rub the energy downward motion down your hand, off your arm, like literally brushing it off, right? And you can do that. It's such a good embodiment exercise too. I've done that a lot in yoga where you kind of like swoop the energy off of your body. Writing, poetry, word vomit, bullet lists, doing something where the thoughts get out of your brain, talk therapy, talking to a friend, positive way to process, right? Walking, briskly walking, breathing, breath work, right? Like inhale, exhale, moving that emotion through your body, creating something, doing something with that energy. Throwing paint at a canvas is a relevant image that pops into my mind. You know, this idea of just getting it out of yourself and onto something that can hold it. And that something can be a journal, it could be a therapist, it could be a friend, it could be a canvas, it could be the air if you're just breathing deeply. Whatever that is, emotions need motion, because unless you allow yourself to intentionally explode in small ways, you will involuntarily implode in a big way. And the last mantra that I want to leave you with, like I said, this just made it all full circle for me, and this is what reinvigorated my fire. It was this download that kept coming up for me over the past few days, and that this message, this mantra, to lead with love. Lead with self-love. Lead with love. Lord knows the world needs more loving leadership. Regardless of who is president, we can all be more loving toward ourselves and toward each other. We are all leaders of some sort. We are all leaders of our mindset. We are all leaders in our homes, and we are all leaders in our micro communities. So I hope that you can remind yourself to lead with love, to show up with love, to not succumb to the hatred that I think a lot of our world has dipped into. Can you rise above that? Can you vibrate at a higher frequency to lead with a higher level? I always think of Michelle Obama because her ability to do that, you know, her whole message of like, when they go low, we go high. To me, that's what leading with love means. And you must fill your cup so much so, fill your cup with so much love that it overflows to the causes you care about. So do not lead with lack. Lead with love. Lead with self-love. I hope that this message finds you in divine timing. If it's helpful, share it with somebody you think it could benefit. And I hope you refer to these 5 mantras to be here now, to remind yourself that this too shall pass, to choose to believe that everything is happening for you. Keep in mind that emotions need motion, and most importantly, to lead with love, and let love lead you.